Hey guys, welcome back to the next part of our series. Today we're going to continue with the horn details. We're going to continue with this metal bit. I did draw a couple of extra squares just to finish the main shape. And before we finish the little loops, sometimes this is more like a mental thing rather than a 3D technique. But when you feel like you're moving faster than you are, it keeps you motivated, right? So even though we need to finish these little loops, by moving on to this part of the horn and finishing this lower section, that's going to give me a little bit of extra boost to finish this. This is also one of the suggestions that I give my students when they're approaching or doing a project that's a very demanding or very time consuming. If you feel like you're not advancing, try to do the easy parts of the project, an easy model, an easy texture, something that just allows you to see the finish line get closer and closer. That's a good way to keep yourself motivated, because since it does tend to be a little bit of a tedious work, especially here with topologies we've mentioned, being able to keep your spirit up, it's a good idea. I also recommend getting your favorite your favorite music, if you like to snack while working, or if you like to drink a soft drink, of course, such as a lemonade or a Coke or something. This is a good moment. Anything that can keep you focused on your work. There's a technique that I also use. I use this quite a bit while recording all of the sessions, which is the Pomodoro technique, which is you go for a let's say a 15, 20, 25 minute work, and then you rest for 5 minutes. That also keeps you quite refreshed. So here's one thing. As you can see, I added a couple of triangles in this section of the element, but we need more geometry. However, I can't insert another edge loop because it's not gonna work properly. But I can go to my knife brush and just cut across, and that's gonna cut even the triangles, and it's gonna give me the resolution that I'm going for. So the knife brush works really nicely in conjunction with the quad draw. Over here, to be honest, since it's a part that we're not gonna see, easiest way to solve this is just mesh, fill hole, grab the face, edit mesh, and poke. And there we go. So with that, we're pretty much finished with the horn, and we can focus on this little loops right here. So we used 6 divisions on the other loops. So I'm going to follow the exact same number right here. So that's 3, 3, 3, 3. There we go. And then we're going to go over here. There we go. And there we go. And remember that this is camera based, so sometimes you're going to have to move or rotate your camera a little bit so that Maya knows how to properly create the things that we want. Here I'm going to show you another trick. I like using this especially for this sort of things. Just bridge. So just double click, shift, double click, shift, double click, and we bridge. And that's going to give us that. If that happens, don't worry, just assign the same material and it should be fine. And that will allow us to work on that part a little bit easier. Here, again, we're probably going to have to triangulate a couple of bits. We're definitely going to grab this edge right here and bring it down. There we go. Let me get that off isolation mode so we can see what we're doing. There we go. And yeah, just a couple of triangles here and there. That's fine. And a couple of triangles here and there. This is a very common pattern you're going to see in retopology, where you have corners just going to the main area. The one thing I don't like about this one, as you can see, it's really pushing it up due to the sort of welding details that we gave it there. So we want to keep this as close as possible. Otherwise, we might get some ugly bakes, and of course, that's not what we want. Let's go for the final ones right here. So there. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1. Oh, careful with those crazy points that we get sometimes. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That one goes pretty much there. And that one goes there. We go back to object mode. Grab those 6, grab the 6, and we just bridge. There we go. We can even bridge this one as well, from here to here, just to help us a little bit on the process. And there we go. So we go there, triangle, triangle. Again, this thing is floating a little bit, so I'm just gonna like move this points closer to the surface there. There we go. There we go. And there we go. Cool. So as you can see, now this horn is ready. We again do a mesh display, soften etch, and then this is what we would see in game. Again, you're not gonna have like a huge amount of density here because it doesn't make sense. Like look how small this is compared to the rest of the character. Like even if we just turn on our low poly characters, like this is like the normal, like maybe on a close-up you're gonna see the character like this. Do we want to spend even more polygons there? Not really, so we're not gonna be smoothing this. You can also see it's really close in resolution, not the exact same, but it's really close in resolution to our smoothed character. But again, you need to make sure that you understand where you're adding the divisions and where you're keeping things a little bit lower. Now, for this one's a tricky one. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add one more here and one more here, similar to what we did on the other horn. And the reason why I'm saying that this is a tricky one is because we actually don't want to pay too much attention to the bandages. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit the border of the bandage following this thing right here. We might need to increase. So for instance, there, we might need a triangle, okay, to capture this elements. But all of that like negative space right there, I'm literally going to ignore it. Okay, again, this is not such an important detail that we need to worry too much about. So I'm just going to ignore it. I do mention this quite frequently when we're doing the main characters. Like try to keep this like floating bits as like separate as possible. We don't want to have as many of those. They tend to be, or they can create some issues. And this is one of those issues where we're going to have to literally jump across in order to capture this. Now that we jumped across, I'm actually going to go in a little bit, especially on those areas, so that we don't have any like wrong silhouette going over there. But all of these bits right here, I'm literally gonna ignore them. As you can see right here, I'm just following the shape of the horn, and I'm just gonna continue going like this. Why am I doing this? Because this thing is supposed to be really close to the upper surface of the horn, right? So all of this detail is gonna be captured on the normal map. Yes, we won't have as nice of a silhouette as we could have, but we're also not gonna like spend a tremendous amount of polygons on something that's so simple as this like cloth thing, right? On the hands and on the chest, where the belts are a little bit more important, we might spend a little bit more resolution. We need to decide, and we need to be very mindful about. Is mindful the right word? Or conscious? We need to be very conscious about where we spend our topology budget, and this is not one of those places. Like all of this can easily be done like this. Will we get a better bake or a better result if we were to do the horn as a separate piece and do the bandages of a separate piece? Of course. But again, since we have so many accessories and so many points already on the character, and we're still missing a lot, we still need to do a lot of them, this is a really important approach that we need to follow. We're not going to be doing every single bit. That's another one of the reasons why I kept this thing as close as possible to the surface. This one, we might even, like, I'm even tempted to go back into ZBrush and just push it up a little bit more, because this floating bit right there, that's really tricky. It can produce some really weird bakes because this bit right here is floating. Another option, though, is we could just, like, that single, like, thing, we could do it as a separate piece and save ourselves a lot of trouble. In this case, I'm gonna do it like this. And just to show you that we can't do this, I'm literally gonna ignore it. So there's gonna be faces here, and we're gonna have to bake that piece down, okay? If I try to bake this right now, it's not gonna give me a good result. But once we calibrate it, I'm sure we can bake this in so that we don't have to worry about the topology on that particular piece. And if we have to, it's just a matter of rebuilding that. But again, that's why I mentioned that hanging bits and anything that changes the silhouette is always something that needs to be considered when doing retopology. like that piece right there, which is also floating, we might have a little bit of an issue with the bakes. But we've already talked about the way we can handle that. By increasing the distance at which the rays are looking for things, we're going to be able to bake these things down. Cool. So let's just have the final like border right here. There we go. There we go. I feel like a little bit extra geometry here might not be a bad idea. See how thin that area is? So I'm just going to add the edge loop and just smooth it out a little bit over here. And then this edge, of course, we're just going to say mesh, fill hole, grab the face, edit mesh, poke. There we go. Now this is the shape that we're going for. As you can see, it holds most of it, and we also have something that we can work with. I'm just going to say mesh display, soften edge. Now, since this is a tricky piece, like both of these guys are tricky pieces, it's not a bad idea to do a little bit of a test. Like we can do a test. So I'm going to combine these two guys into a single mesh. Delete the history. This is going to be called, these are called horns underscore high. Let's export those. File, export selection. Let's call this horns underscore high. And it's very important that every now and then, if you need to do this, it's perfectly fine to do it. Just do a quick bake test and see how things are looking. If they're looking nice on a 4K texture for just two horns, it's going to look perfectly fine once the UVs are smaller and sharing the space with every other piece. So the one thing we need to do here, though, is the UVs. Let's isolate this, guys. I'm going to say UV, delete UVs, UV, planar mapping, or camera based projection, whichever you prefer. UV, 3D cut, and the cut is going to be very, very simple. We cut the bottom part of this guy's right here. And in this case, for instance, this guy right here, just along the surface, all the way to like a pointy bit like there. That should be more than enough. This one's the one that's going to be a little bit different because we do need to cut the inside of these things out. To be honest, I would cut the whole thing out, like the whole little like loop. It's kind of like a little cylinder, right? So we cut this little cylinder out. It's going to be the front and the back. We're going to have to do that for every single one. So we do that one there and there. So that's it, front and back. We do that one there, there, there. There we go. Yep, that's cut. And then we need a line that goes through all the objects as well. So something like this. Oh. Like that. This is not the final UV. We're going to do cleaner UVs later. This is just a very basic one. Control U, Control L. There you go. You can see we got a working UV. Again, not the perfect UV, but a working UV. File, export selection. Let's just call this horns. And I'm going to bring this into Substance Painter real quick. There we go. File. We're going to do a new one. Select horns, open. Okay. Textures and settings. We go to the big mesh maps. Let's make this at 4K, super high res. Horns high. There we go. And I immediately, like, it's super obvious to me that we're going to get some errors, but let's just do one quick bake so that we can see the errors. There you go. You can see where it's cutting. Okay, so all of those like shadows and weird areas, that's the rays that are not getting all the way to the top. But everything else looks quite nice, as you can see right here. We're getting some interesting effects here and there. And that looks perfectly fine. Like, I know we can texture this. Yes, it's not the most like amazing looking bandage right here, but it's such a small detail that we really don't care. I'm going to increase the max frontal distance in this case because I know that that's one. I'm going to increase the max frontal distance a little bit and the max frontal distance a little bit more. I'm worried about this area right here. We bake. There we go. Look at that. We're catching the bandage. So even though the bandage is floating, we're making it so that it looks like this thing is actually there, okay? So that's why we don't have to worry about all of those other details. Look at that, beautiful. It's a beautiful bake. It's great. It works perfectly fine. Like if you see the character at this distance, it looks perfectly fine. Yes, there's a couple of like weird areas like this guy right here. But again, textures are gonna make a great, they're gonna help quite a bit. Look at this, guys. Now, this is one of the unfortunate like consequences of doing what we just did, which is increasing the race. This guy's right here, the face that is right here, is actually baking a little bit of the face right there. Am I worried about that? Not really. We can, of course, like just like paint out that bit of normal map, and it shouldn't be that much of a problem. We can do 2 bakes and then just mix them together, like the correct bake here and the correct bake here. We could even separate these 2 guys into different meshes and bake each one separately, and that way we avoid having this exact same error over here. Right now, what I'm taking a look at is the horns. Like I want to make sure the horns look as nice as possible, and to me, this looks perfectly fine. I like to go here to the smart materials, and there's one that's called the this marble fine white. This is a great way to just like throw in a quick texture. Look at that. Look at how much detail we're going to be able to get there. And it's going to be very difficult to see that sort of stuff because it's going to be covered. It's going to be filled with rust, for instance. Like if we throw in another quick rust layer here, just a black mask generator, and we do like a dirt layer, like that's going to cover not everything, but most of it. Or at the like in the worst possible like case scenario, we can just like literally go in there and paint it ourselves. And it's going to be very, very difficult to notice that there's an error there. Again, at any point inside of Photoshop, for instance, we can just like paint out those specific elements. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I'm going to close this. We don't need them anymore. This is not going to be the final bake. So our horns are ready. We just get them in there. And if we take a look at the whole character as what we have right now, let me just turn off the horns. We pretty much have all of the upper things that we need right here. I'm taking a look at what else we need for this chapter. I think we need the mouth. I'm going to explain how we're going to get that one. We've already done the horns, and that's pretty much it, because we mentioned that the beard, the side beard, eyebrows, mustache, all of this beard things we're not going to use. And after this, it's all about like arms, pants, and stuff like that. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how we're going to get the mouth out of the character, and that's it. The eyes, that's another thing. We're going to do the eyes way later. After we finish the whole texturing, I'm going to show you my process for doing game ready, what's the word? Performance wise good eyes for our characters. So yeah, that's pretty much for it for this one so far, my friends. I'll see you back on the next video when we explore the mouth, and that's pretty much going to be it for chapter 2. So hang on tight, and I'll see you back on the next video. Bye bye.